India versus WHO over COVID death data. WHO deaths dossier debunked. Mischievous, WHO's data flawed.
Almost 250,000 deaths have now been reported to WHO.
Modi government bashes WHO data, model and method. India fights WHO with facts. Getting you all the details of that big story. A fight has broken out between India and the World Health Organization, with India issuing rebuttals after rebuttals on that data. Why did you not use our data, which is more robust and more accurate, is the question that India is asking of the World Health Organization. That story and much more ahead on the show. I'm Sneha Moldani. This is 6 p.m. Prime. The headlines first. Meltdown in over BJP's Bagga arrest. BJP workers break down police barriers. Protests outside Aam Aadmi Party headquarters. Delhi BJP chief Adesh Gupta has been detained. High drama in Varanasi Kashi temple. Gyan Vyapi mosque survey has been blocked. Locals protest, raise slogans as court-appointed team reaches to conduct a videography of disputed site. Blood politics peaks in Bengal. Amit Shah meets the family of deceased BJP worker in Kolkata. Calls for a CBI probe. Says there is anarchy in Mamata's case. Mega India Today impact. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Stalin says Vignesh custodial death is going to be investigated as a murder case. AIADMK stages protest, demands a CBI probe. Political temperatures soar in Telangana. BJP chief Nadu rose on KCR's turf. Declares war ahead of Rahul Gandhi's visit. TRS taunts Rahul, says, what did you do for this state? Billionaire Elon Musk likely to show Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal the door after $45 billion deal closes. Reports say Musk could take over as Twitter CEO too. The government has come out strongly against the World Health Organization's COVID deaths data, questioning the report on multiple levels. The government blasted World Health Organization's COVID deaths claim, raising questions over the validity of the estimate model used by the international public health body. Sources on data projections for COVID deaths have said that there are serious objections with data presented which showed excess mortality. Sources also say that data collection happens in India from 7.9 lakh centers. While there could be some discrepancies, it isn't to the tune of what has been projected by the WHO. 10 letters have been written by the Union Health Secretary, but there has not been any response to this matter yet. Health Ministry sources call the WHO estimated COVID excessive deaths data a vicious agenda to malign a country which is emerging as a credible healthcare hub in the pandemic. Government sources also say this data is going to be presented in the executive board of the World Health Organization and challenged. The World Health Organization has claimed that over 47 lakh people lost their lives due to coronavirus infection in India. However, the centre has refuted these claims, questioning the credibility. Here's more.
$15 million people died from COVID or from the pandemic's impact on global health system between January 2020 and December 2021. nearly 10 million over the 5.4 million deaths officially reported by countries across the world. And of that, 4.7 million deaths took place in India alone. 10 times what India has officially reported. And roughly a third of the deaths that the WHO estimates as part of a new report, sending shock waves across India and the world. But that isn't the full story. The Indian government has come out strongly against the WHO, questioning the report at multiple levels. But if it's India's word against the WHO, let's ask some serious questions of the WHO, whose handling of the coronavirus plague has been a subplot to the global pandemic. Has the World Health Organization inspired confidence in its handling of the COVID pandemic, or has it been a global hypocrite, largely bending to certain clients? Like China, for instance, that reports no data whatsoever on COVID deaths and remains unquestioned by the WHO. WHO's claims on other countries fly blind when it comes to China, a nation that continues to hide the origin of the Wuhan virus till date. The WHO actually claims China's excess COVID deaths is amongst lowest in the world, a country that makes a mockery of its zero COVID policy by forcefully keeping its citizens under lockdown. When the world was suffering the first wave, China's COVID deaths suddenly disappeared from official reports after April 1st, 2020. China's COVID case count never went beyond 80,000 in the public domain, and the WHO never really made a noise about it. China has in fact continued to report thousands of new cases of COVID from April 1st, 2020 until January 8th, 2022. China officially counted 34,107 new COVID infections, including 12,000 in Hong Kong as per Johns Hopkins data. The University of Washington estimate put China's excess mortality at 17,900, including 10,600 from Hubei province, where the coronavirus was first detected 2 years ago. While the WHO report asks no questions of China, India is the only country to stand up to object to the claims.
That occurred after testing positive for COVID-19 were occurring in the first 4 weeks. So a cutoff of 30 days was given for the definition of death. So this is robust data that we have, and a robust definition that I think only NHS has used it in the UK, and we have used it. Many countries don't have this definition.
The data the WHO has used is more on hearsay evidence of what has been there in the media or from unconfirmed sources. That data itself is questionable, and to do a modeling on that data is not correct, and it's not scientifically a right thing to do. And especially when you have data which is more robust as far as the RGI data is concerned.
To apply assumptions based on a subset of states, based on reports that come from the websites and media reports, and then you come out with a exorbitant number is not tenable. So that's on the process, and we are disappointed by what WHO has done.
India has also presented its side of data collected. Earlier this week, the government released civil registration data showing 8.1 million deaths in 2020, a 6% rise over the previous year. Officials played it down, saying all the 4,74,806 excess deaths could not be attributed to COVID. According to official records, some 1,49,000 people died of COVID in India in 2020. While the China resorts to blatant human rights violation with its forced testing and vaccination, India carried out a smooth, voluntary vaccine drive, protecting more than 72% with one dose and more than 60% fully vaccinated. While China masters in data manipulation, WHO calls for better data monitoring from the world.
The WHO has repeatedly come under fire when it comes to questions surrounding China, but it refuses to learn from its past mistakes. An independent panel that was looking at the pandemic response said that China and the national health authorities there, along with WHO, failed to act in time in 2019, when the genesis of the coronavirus was first reported from Wuhan. China continues to hide data and does not reveal the true picture of the COVID burden in their country. But the World Health Organization preaches other nations on development and proper data upkeep. This is Milan Sharma reporting for India Today.
Meanwhile, back home in India, politics has erupted over the World Health Organization's COVID death estimate. After the WHO's report on India's COVID-19 death toll, including that of other countries, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi slammed the Modi government, accusing the centre of lying. Here's more.
"47 lakh excess COVID deaths in India," claimed WHO. The claim has opened a can of worms. The opposition has cornered the ruling BJP government over the claims made. Congress's Rahul Gandhi added fuel to the fire by tweeting that 47 lakh Indians died due to COVID pandemic, not 4.8 lakh as claimed by the government. Science does not lie, Modi does. Respect families who have lost loved ones, support them with a mandate of 4 lakh compensation. The ruling BJP government has hit back at the opposition.
मोदी जी को नीचा दिखाने का ये जो प्रयास राहुल गांधी का है, ये कोई आज का नहीं है। 2014 से ही निरंतर मोदी जी को नीचे दिखाने के प्रयास में, हमेशा भारतवर्ष को नीचे दिखाने में राहुल गांधी सफल रहे। चाहे सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक का विषय हो, चाहे अन्य महत्वपूर्ण विषय हो, सभी विषयों पर जिस प्रकार से राहुल गांधी ने समय समय पर मोदी जी और भारतीय जनता पार्टी पे आक्रमण करते हुए भारत को नीचा दिखाया है, ये बहुत ही दुखद है।
It is not just the two prime political parties but state governments, whether BJP, Congress or the Aam Aadmi Party, none have agreed with the COVID estimates presented by the WHO.
मैं पूरे देश के बारे में मैं कोई प्रवक्ता नहीं हूँ, मेरा बताना मुश्किल है, पर दिल्ली का मैं बता सकता हूँ। दिल्ली के जो आंकड़े हैं बिल्कुल ऑथेंटिक हैं, बिल्कुल सही हैं। दिल्ली में 25,600 के करीब डेथ हुई हैं, एक एक डेथ को काउंट किया गया है, सबको बताऊँ।
Indian states have been complicit in not just hiding death figures but repeated reminders to many states by the central government often fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, none can deny the tears, pain and agony of the families who have lost loved ones in this pandemic.
Later, just 2 states came forward to say that the minimum number of deaths occurred due to oxygen. And while the WHO does say that there have been more deaths than actually reported, it may not be an overestimation, but only a true death count can reveal the death burden due to COVID in India. With Ravikant Otawar, Milan Sharma for India Today.
Joining me now is Dr. Rajiv Das Gupta, is a member of the National COVID Task Force. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Das Gupta. What is your take on this system that has been adopted by the WHO to arrive at a conclusion that the death figure vis-a-vis COVID-19 deaths in India is actually 10 times more than what the government has said?
Thank you and good evening. I think a distinction needs to be made that these are not COVID deaths, but these are excess deaths attributed to the pandemic. And to that extent, there is a fundamental difference, and therefore both the technical discourse and the media discourse needs to take that into account. Now, having said that, the WHO puts out a long 30-page note on the methodology. And for India, it does specifically mention that because all-cause mortality data were not available at that point, a subset of 12 states for which data was available has been taken and extrapolated to the country. Now, I think India, with its very robust public health institutions, universities, and other academia, a very large body of academia, can certainly run this model, given that the methodology has been spelled out. And now that we have the 2020 civil registration system data released just 2 to 3 days back, India should also run that model and come up with definitive figures with which this discourse can continue forward, so that we are also able to come up with what we believe are the true figures of the excess death associated with the pandemic.
But Dr. Dasgupta, India has said in a press statement, a strong one at that we did share our data, but the WHO has not considered the data that India has essentially shared. So is it a case of the WHO not trusting a member state with its data?
Well, India, as the report stated earlier, this is going to be placed in the executive board. India currently is the chair of the WHO executive board, and the Health Ministry of India will be representing both India as well as chairing that board. And I'm sure with India's chairpersonship there would be a good academic and technical engagement. But having said that, now that even if as India says, WHO did not take that CRS data into account, we can certainly now apply that data and come up with a figure that we believe is more realistic than what's come out in this report, on which there is unanimity or near unanimity that it's way too high, even based on lived experiences.
But Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, in fact, if a country as large as ours is saying that, look, if you've collected data only from 12 states, it does not give an accurate picture. Our method of collecting data from 7.9 lakh collection centers, here's our system. It's a robust one. It's extremely efficient. It's a large network of 3 lakh data collectors and a reliable system that we've been using for COVID or no COVID. Why can't you consider this data? But the WHO goes on to publish this data in spite of objections, 10 letters written by the Union Health Secretary, and puts out a footnote at the bottom talking about India's CRS and the data under the Registrar General of India. Do you think that's fair? Do you think the WHO has been fair to us?
WHO has now come up with a statement that now that the CRS 2020 has been released, they will run the model again with those. And as I said, India should certainly do that and come up with a set of figures so that it can take the WHO estimates head on. Now, at the same time, the methodology does take into account a very, very large range of factors, and all of which make certain assumptions, and therefore, while it adds many layers to try and make it as robust as possible, some error would creep into all these through all these layers. Now, having said that, WHO therefore also comes up with a lower level of estimate and a higher level of estimate. And therefore, if India can actually run this again, we can see whether our own computations lie more towards the lower end or even lower than the lower end, for that matter, if we are actually right about it, most of the data has been captured. But certainly there's a room to engage in that exercise, and I believe that would be a very, very powerful argument on behalf of India.
Absolutely. Give our answer in the form of our data, which is much more reliable than the data that has been put out by the WHO. Dr. Dasgupta, thank you so much for your perspective on that important story. Now let's talk about China. What about China's data? China's death figures, China's numbers. What is the WHO saying about the figures that China is regularly giving out? Is it talking about these figures as an underestimate? What about the situation in China as it imposes the world's most brutal lockdown? Inhumane COVID management in China has left people shattered. Locals are being beaten up, confined in the name of COVID management. But there's not been a word from the World Health Organization on what's happening in China. Here's more.
the most brutal action against its own people. Citizens being hit, beaten, coerced and confined. This is China's zero COVID policy for you. Unscientific, inhuman and senseless. The Chinese COVID policy has zero empathy in addition to having zero results. China has been following the horrific policy of coercion with COVID-positive patients for days now. Killing pets, separating mothers from kids, or leaving people locked down in Shanghai without essential supplies. In these videos posted by citizens, many of them residents of Shanghai, citizens are protesting against action by health authorities, only to be dragged and pulled away. The scenes speak volumes of the failure in handling the infection that originated from its soil. The truth that China denies vehemently till this date.
It appears as though a long-term strategy of zero COVID is simply not going to work. It imposes a lot of stresses on the population, lots of economic difficulties, a lot of social difficulties in terms of the very large-scale movements of populations to confinement zones that Shanghai is currently seeing. It's unlikely that this can be sustained, as I said, for a long period of time. We may just simply have to figure out better strategies.
These pictures, now for the world to see, show how turning positive for COVID is a deadly traumatic experience in China. When the world is trying to work its way around the virus, a country that prides in calling itself an emergent superpower is failing.
So news just coming in, going straight to the Haryana Chief Minister speaking on this entire controversy around Bagga.
लेकिन उसका रास्ता ये होता है कि उसका निर्णय चार्जशीट करके कोर्ट के ऊपर छोड़ना चाहिए, कोर्ट का।
ये पंजाब की दूसरी बड़ी कार्रवाई है जी। पहले स्मृति ईरानी जी के खिलाफ भी जैसे उन्होंने केस रखा, फिर
कुमार विश्वास पर भी किया,
तो ये क्या लग रहा है क्योंकि बग्गा जी पे भी पॉलिटिकल
डेमोक्रेटिक सेटअप को नुकसान पहुंचाने की ये कार्रवाई पॉलिटिकल शय के ऊपर, सरकार की शय के ऊपर पुलिस को करनी पड़ी होगी, ऐसा मैं मानता हूँ। है ये ना, उसकी निंदा कर रहे हैं ना। मैं कहता हूँ इस घटना की जितना निंदा की जाए उतनी कम है।
कल एक बहुत बड़ा हरियाणा पुलिस को बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि थी जो करनाल के पास पकड़े हैं 4 आतंकवादी, और आज गुरवंत सिंह पर उन्होंने वीडियो मैसेज करके और आपके नाम और साहब का नाम लेके एक और वीडियो सोशल मीडिया में भी डाल दिया, पत्रकारों को भी डालते हैं इस, क्योंकि अब आज की जो घटना पता लगी है कि लोकल लोगों से साथ भी करनाल में इन लोगों का संपर्क में थे, जैसे आज टीवी पे चल रहा था एसपी करनाल की तरफ से, तो इसमें वास्तविकता क्या निकली? क्या ये भी उधर से बारी कर रहे थे या लोकल?
वैसे तो ये बहुत बड़ी घटना है, सुरक्षा एजेंसियों के लिए जांच करने का विषय है, कोई भी चीज ज्यादा कहना हमारे लिए भी ठीक नहीं है, लेकिन जो अभी तक पुलिस की जानकारी में पूछताछ में जो बातें आई हैं, पंजाब के व्यक्ति हैं और पाकिस्तान में जो व्यक्ति बैठे हैं, बिंदा, क्या नाम था उनका? इंडा, वहां से इन्होंने ये सामान सप्लाई किया है और जानकारी ये मिली है कि ड्रोन के द्वारा सप्लाई की गई है, और ये बीच में मीडिएटर जैसे होते हैं सप्लाई करने वाले, इनका एक उनके हाथ लिंक था। ये सामान उन्होंने ले जा करके जो पूछताछ की, तेलंगाना में एक ऐसे स्थान के ऊपर जहां कोई आबादी नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, जंगल का एक्सपर्ट बताया, उसके अंदर इन्होंने रखना था, रख के आ जाना था। इनको भी पता नहीं कि उसको हैंडओवर यानी कौन उठाएगा कौन नहीं उठाएगा, इस प्रकार से इनकी प्लानिंग थी। लेकिन ये जो सारा असला था बहुत खतरनाक था, इस प्रकार से था कि जो रिमोट कंट्रोल से भी चीजों को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचा सकता है। वो आईबी की इन्फॉर्मेशन थी। अब आईबी की इन्फॉर्मेशन के बाद हरियाणा पुलिस अलर्ट हुई, और अलर्ट होने के बाद इन्होंने इनको बस्ताड़ा करनाल में पकड़ा, और पकड़ करके मैं समझता हूँ कि बहुत बड़ा एक कोई साजिश के तहत ये जो सारा काम किया जा रहा था उसका भंडाफोड़ हुआ है।
ये गुरपत सिंह जो पन्नू है आए दिन अब मेल पे उतराया,
The chorus for demanding justice for Vignesh is only getting louder. Taking stock of the situation, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, M.K. Stalin, has said that the horrific custodial death of Vignesh is going to be investigated as a murder case. The AIADMK staged a walkout from the assembly over the case's investigation being handed over to the CBCID. Leader of opposition Edapadi K. Palaniswamy has demanded a CBI probe in this case. Meanwhile, the State's Human Rights Commission has taken cognizance. The notice issued by the body states the matter is going to be listed for further consideration before the Commission after 4 weeks. The Commissioner of Police has been asked to submit a report before the Human Rights Commission within 4 weeks.
மாண்பு முதலமைச்சர் அவர்கள் சட்டமன்றத்திலே விக்னேஷ் மரணத்தில் குறிப்பிட்ட செய்தியும் தற்போது விக்னேஷுடைய உடற்கூறு ஆய்வில் தெரிவிக்கப்பட்ட செய்தியும் முரண்பட்டுள்ள காரணத்தினால் இந்த வழக்கு நேர்மையாக முறையாக நடைபெற வேண்டும் என்று சொன்னால் இந்த வழக்கை சிபிஐ ஒப்படைக்க வேண்டும் என்று முதலமைச்சருக்கு நாங்கள் சட்டமன்றத்திலே கோரிக்கை வைத்தோம்.
எப்படி பாக்குறீங்க? உங்களுக்கு அது திருப்தி இருக்கா?
அது திருப்பி இருக்குங்க எனக்கு. அது திருப்பி இருக்கு.
தேவையான ஜஸ்டிஸ் கிடைக்கும்ன்ற நம்பிக்கை இருக்கா இதுல இப்போ?
இருக்கு நம்பிக்கை.
அண்ட் இப்போ பாத்தீங்கன்னா சிபிஐ விசாரணை வேணும்ன்ற மாதிரி சிலவங்க கேக்குறாங்க. உங்களுக்கு அந்த மாதிரி ஏதாவது கோரிக்கை இருக்கா?
வேணும்.
சிபிஐ விசாரணை வேணுமா இல்ல இப்போ போற விசாரணை ஓகேவா உங்களுக்கு?
இதுவே போதும்.
விசாரணை நல்லா நடந்தா போதும்.
அது நல்லா நடந்தா போதும்.
சிஎம்க்கு நீங்க என்ன சொல்ல விரும்புறீங்க?
இந்த மாதிரி யாருக்கும் நடக்கூடாது. அதுதான்.
Well, today is the day most Marvel fans were waiting for. The release of the much-awaited Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Ahead of the release, India Today spoke exclusively to Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch. Listen in.
Just got out of hand.
You break the rules.
Look out!
You become a hero. I do it. I become the enemy.
Hi, Benedict. Welcome to India Today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I have to begin by asking you about that scene with the cloak. We've had that moment where you and the cloak obviously have some sort of an altercation. If I take you back in time to the first time you wore the cloak and the suit, do you remember that moment and what was your reaction like?
Yeah, well, it was my idea. It's the moment where I break away from Christine Palmer in the Origin movie in 2016, Doctor Strange, and it was an emotional scene, and I shed a tear, and then Cloak. I said, wouldn't it be fun if Cloak started sort of wiping away the tear? And I was like, stop it, So it was sort of my idea, and I think from that, Cloak now has his own agent, he has his own contract, he has his own rider, he has his own team, he has everything that I gave him, and I get none of the credit. So I think I've had enough of the Cloak right now, No, I'm joking. It's a fun thing to interact with, even though it's not there like a lot of things in these films. And it's not, he does a lot of work on his own when Wong isn't there or is otherwise engaged as the Sorcerer Supreme, which is a sore point, as you know. So yeah, it's nice to have someone to talk to.
Right.
Every night, I dream the same dream. The nightmare begins. I did what I had to do to protect our world. You cannot control everything, Strange.
What do you make of this whole conversation that your character was purely reckless with what he did with the multiverse? And, the parallels that people are drawing between he's becoming more and more of Tony Stark, or he's taking that stream of thought. What is your take on this?
Very possibly. You'll have to wait and see what happens in this film. But he's quite an anarchist, and he likes to operate outside of the norms. He's someone who isn't constrained by rules. He's very adaptable, and that's both one of his strengths and one of his weaknesses, I guess. It leaves him vulnerable to certain dangers that he might be best at creating himself at times. I think, he's a renegade, and I like outsiders. I like people who are sort of trying to stretch the rules a little bit. They're a little bit more fun. But he is still trying to be good and do the right thing, just not necessarily in the right way. So you have to wait and see what happens in this one.
Wanda, what do you know about the multiverse?
Viz had his theories. He believed it was dangerous.
He was right.
I was just speaking to Wong before this, and I asked him and I spoke to him about the beautiful Asian heritage that has representation in MCU now.
Yes.
Given the fact that the world is becoming smaller, do you see a character with an Indian origin ever get placed in MCU?
It's about time, don't you think? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more of the world still to include, but we're very happy one step at a time to be part of that story in our culture. And I think the inclusion of America Chavez in this film is a shining example of that, an LGBTQ+ community character who's representing in that regard, and also the Latino community as well. And she's bringing an awesome power. I mean, once we get to the stage where this is normal and not a talking point, that alone should be enough. She's a very, very powerful character who can punch through the multiverse. So, but it's great. It's great as we evolve that these are stepping stones to a fully inclusive and diverse reflection of our world at large, our society at large.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Stephen. Your desecration of reality will not go unpunished. We should tell him the truth.
Finally, what message for the Indian fans? You have a huge fan base in India. What would you like to tell them? Would you come visit us?
Oh man, yeah, in a heartbeat. I love India. I mean, I've got a little family, so that takes precedent. But maybe I can come and work there. I don't know, do a bit of filming there. I really, really love your country. It has been almost a lifetime since I was last there as a 19-year-old, but I had the most extraordinary and informative experience, really. Informative is not the right word. Formative is the right word. When I was teaching in the Tibetan Buddhist monastery in West Bengal, in their monastery, and staying there, sleeping there, and then working in the Tibetan community as well, the refugee community there, and then experiencing India at large. First of all, when I got up there, I went from Delhi across by train through Varanasi, and then on the way back, we stayed in Rajasthan for a month and journeyed around there. I fell in love with the country, and that's only that part of it. I haven't even been to the south of India yet, let alone Ladakh and all other regions in the north that I'd love to visit. So it's a huge place, and I've only got one life, but I'm hoping that something will bring me back there soon.
Fingers crossed. Absolutely stoked to watch the film. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome. Thank you for yours.